Hello and welcome to The Sexually Satisfied Woman. I am your host, Eva Blake, and in this series, I'm talking to a variety of experts who are uniquely qualified to discuss some of the most common challenges that women face in our sexuality. And over the course of this series, we're going to offer real practices and proven strategies to help you boost your confidence, ditch the shame, and create truly remarkable relationships and intimacy so that you can have the sexual satisfaction that you deserve. And it is my pleasure to welcome to the series Chris Maxwell Rose and Charlotte Mia Rose, partners in love and life. Chris and Charlotte have been immersed in body-based sex education since 2003, and together founded Pleasure Mechanics in 2006. After pioneering the field of sexological bodywork and teaching sold-out workshops worldwide, the Pleasure Mechanics have spent the last 10 years focusing exclusively on online education, delivering their soulful and effective erotic education through courses and their weekly podcast, Speaking of Sex. And you can find them online at thepleasuremechanics.com. So welcome, Charlotte and Chris.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you.
Hey, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Chris.
Yes.
I'm Charlotte.
We're the Pleasure Mechanics.
Yes,
It's a pleasure
thank
to
you.
be in this conversation, and thank you for all you're doing to get this gathering together online. That's no small thing.
No small thing. I'm so glad that you're here. I was recently listening to one of your podcasts on touch, and the two of you have built a business around touch. You have a relationship on touch. You came together because of touch. And so needless to say, I was touched. So I want to talk about touch. And I really want to start with, we all know that touch is fundamental. It's fundamental to thriving as a human being, right? Babies can't survive without touch. And I believe that touch is fundamental to pleasure and connection. It's how we build, intimate, close relationships. So let's just start here with, why are some of us really bad at it? Or some of us really good at it, right? There seems to be this kind of polarity. And how do we get better?
I don't think that humans are bad at it. I think it's such an innate skill that we have. I think some people are not practiced at it. We live in a world where we have working hands instead of feeling hands. So many people are relating to their hands really functionally. And when we begin to shift our attention and start paying attention to them as tools of pleasure, as ways to communicate and take in information from a lover's body, it becomes a completely different way of relating to them. Like, as humans, we can feel Braille and gain that level of sensitivity. And so it's absolutely possible, I think, for all of us. It just starts with bringing attention to our hands and beginning to listen with them and feel with them. But most of us need to relax our hands to start with, and that will begin the shift from
But also touch and pleasure and the cultures of affection and intimacy, that's so cultural. And one of the primary cultures there is our natal family, which none of us choose. We're born as babies, wham into these natal families and cultures of origin that for many of us, for most of us, are not touchy-feely pools of affection and warmth and attachment and co-attunement, right? Like, a lot of us, touch was a broken link in our humanity, and we're trying to restore it. So that's one of the things that we noticed. So we fell in love 14 years ago and started a business 3 months later because we were both trained in massage before we met each other. We met each other through the erotic massage, sexological bodywork lineage. And so we had this rich language of touch between us. And when we tell people that, they respond like, oh, massage, wouldn't that be amazing? And everyone kind of had this melting response to that invitation of what would it be like to fall in love with so much touch between you? We realize it's something that is so learnable. It is so teachable, but most of us won't go to massage school or sexological bodywork training where we're doing hands-on erotic massage training with a group of strangers for 2 glorious weeks, right? Although I wish all of us could. But in that absence, how do we learn how to show up and touch? And because the other big piece here is touch is not just about giving. It's also about receiving. And that is this whole skill set of learning and practicing how to receive affection and intimacy and touch, let alone pleasure and ecstasy and orgasm and arousal, right? All of these experiences need practice. And for many of us, we weren't given that as we developed and became adults. We're really restoring that, often from a deficit of abuse and trauma. And so that's why, I think because a lot of us have never had the opportunity to restore that piece of our humanity and come home to our bodies, no matter what we look like, no matter what else our bodies are experiencing, right? Like so many of us have chronic illness or chronic pain. With all of that, how do we come home to pleasure, to touch, to that affection, that love language we really talk about it as?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Thanks so much for that reframe. I mean, it's really valuable. I think, in my experience as a sexological body worker, when I have interacted with people around touch, I get the perspective that there's that people think about touch in a few ways, right? There's kind of the formal touch, like you were talking about. I'm a massage therapist. I have this set of rules and I do this thing to you. And, there's this relationship, right? And then there's sexual touch, but that's very private. You only do that with one other person. And there are a lot of parameters around that. And then there's like mother to child, which is also in some ways, it's kind of also strict, right? It's if I'm the mother, I'm the nurturer, and then I'm giving to the child or interacting with them in some way. And then there's like this kind of sports touch, which is like a pat on the back, it's like, oh, good job, teammate, right? So I'd love if you could, help us unpack a little bit more about like, what are some of the other options for touch that help us connect back into our humanity, help us connect with other people in our lives that are maybe outside of these formal relationships per se?
Great question.
Yeah, but I am going to start with our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to how we touch ourselves and how we feel our own touch, how we practice attending to ourselves and offering ourselves nourishment, because I do think it starts there. Often we skip over that and we want our lover to be the primary person to offer us touch. But I think there is a lack of connection to ourselves when we do that. And so it's harder to access our own desires, what we really deeply crave, and ask for it if we haven't grounded ourselves in what our body likes and we've offered ourselves that. I think that
self-massages have been a really important practice for you.
Yeah, full body self-massage, not even necessarily genitally, though that is of course included often. But I just think the experience of offering oneself touch is so powerful.
Which can start like, that can sound really far out there for people. That can start with just taking a few more minutes in the shower, choosing a shower soap product that like you love the smell of, and just lingering in a few micro moment of massage with your body. It doesn't have to be this huge, long ceremonial ritual at first, although it can be. And these things can become lifelines. Like when I was really sick, Charlotte only had self-massage to nourish herself and replenish and be the caretaker of a child and a partner and a mother all at once, right? Because these are the erotic realities of our life. We don't have sex lives within this like perfect ideal scenario. We have sex lives within lives of illness and job loss and trauma and sick parents and parents who, like all sorts of things, and children coming in and out of our homes. So how do we make it work within that? So self-massage was really important for you. Couples massage does not also have to be an hour. And I think that's so important for people to hear when we invite you into learning massage with us. One of the things we did on purpose was distill it all down to 5-minute sequences, because a 5-minute foot massage at the end of a long day can just be a game changer. It invites you to slow down, get into a position of relaxing, feeling into touch together. And then from there, that can be it. And it still is a game changer for your evening and over time, your whole relationship. Or that 5-minute foot massage becomes a lower leg massage and maybe something else, right? We can see how these things build on each other, but we have to start learning the language first. And so that was a big motivation for us to like create these resources for people to learn on their own time, at their own pace, in the realm of their relationship together. because then from there you have this language of touch, and it's for everyone you love. You know, my grandparents, when they were in hospice, you can sit at the hospice bed and know how to just be with your dying elder. A friend who's going through brain cancer, you know, the whole progression of that. How do you be with one another's bodies? This is all the language of love and presence and attention that we're talking about. So it can be a really beautiful unfolding in so many relationships. Friends, when they get married, we always offer a massage before their wedding, on their wedding day, to like bring them home into their body. And it can just be for yourself or for your intimate partners. You know, people have different comforts with exchanging touch in their cultural references. So yeah, touch is just, it's such a language that we can remember, you know, even in that word is coming home, like remembering, coming home into the body, and our bodies love it, you know? And so even like little, we call it micro massage, you know, when you can just like lean into your partner's muscles and be like, hey, how are you? I feel you like tense here. What's going on? It makes us feel so seen and heard and taken care of. And it can be so small. And that's what we've really loved watching for people is, you know, learning touch unfolds these huge things in these tiny moment after moment kind of way.
It really is easier. Go ahead.
I love that you have, you mentioned two things that I want to highlight. One, of course, about being with self, right? And giving, you know, giving touch to self, right? And that it doesn't have to be an hour-long ceremony. Cause I got to tell you, as soon as you said, you know, you can touch yourself, my thought was like, I don't have time for that. And I'm practiced in this, right? I've done this work for 10 years. So I already had that right response. And so I just really want to appreciate and highlight how you said it can just be 5 minutes. It can just be like, you know, one moment more in the shower with the bath bubble thing that you like, right? And so I could feel as you were saying that, how even just like taking a breath makes a big difference. So I started thinking about how can I just touch myself for one more breath?
Yeah. And I want to just add on to that. When Chris got back from the hospital, and we had a 1.5-year-old, I was, you know, stretched to the max. And so I gave myself a 5-minute massage challenge to myself, just because I was like, I am so under-resourced and I need to do something. And that feels unintimidating and doable. So if I am working on taking care of everyone for 23 hours and 55 minutes, those 5 minutes were for me. And I found it so unbelievably resourcing. And often once you start, it like feels really good and you want to keep going, right? But like having that time limit for yourself, actually that container felt so doable and accessible. And so I do want to encourage people that yes, it can just be a breath that also counts, like everything counts, but also 5 minutes solo can shift things. Because it is this claiming moment where you're like, my pleasure matters, I matter, me being resourced matters, because I will serve my people more fully and deeply. And that is always worthwhile. And that 5 minutes is like a little brain hack, I feel like.
Yeah. Any way to get in.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Just
one
start.
More breath.
Yeah.
5 minutes, like, because I think there's so much. One of the things that I hear from my clients so often is I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a big challenge to generate the time, to create the time in our lives to, you know, give ourselves this. And I think, you know, one of the other things that I've heard from my clients over the years around couples massage is, a lot of expectations that it has to be this like really big thing that we do together. And we don't have a massage table, or you're not in the right position, or, you know, there's just all of these like barriers that we put up. Right. And so I love that you're really reminding us how simple it can be to come back home to our own body, and when we do that, then we're able to show up better for ourselves and, you know, side benefit for the people in our lives.
And 5 minutes of couples massage, like it literally does change the chemistry of the body. And I invite people to really experiment with this, but it is astounding.
For hours
afterwards. Like the chemistry it's just extraordinary. Like our bodies are exquisite. So to really like play with that and work with that is such an opportunity. And everything that you're doing in those 5 minutes is so setting the stage for having better sex when you feel like it. And it's so important, I think, to separate them and say that massage can just be a complete experience on its own. It doesn't have to lead to sex, but in the culture of your relationship, it will probably make the space for there to be more sex, because we always think about it as keeping the relationship warm so it's easier to get hot, because it really does keep that current of touch and connection present and nourished. Yeah.
And I want to pull that thread of the culture of your relationship, because that relationship can just be with yourself and your pets, yourself and your friends, like whatever the configuration of humans around you is. You create a culture with them. So what do you have time for? Also becomes a question, like how are we using the time that we do have? And how do we layer things? You know, we can also layer self-care and nurturance and touch into other pleasures. So while you're watching your favorite show, like you can give yourself foot massage and get really cozy with that.
Or each other, like, you know.
And that counts too. You know, Game of Thrones and foot massage on the couch go really well together, or whatever it is for you, you know. And that's also the piece here of pleasure and feeling like nourished by your time, feeling recharged by it. Because ideally all of this time, as we say, like pleasure is fuel. You want to feel really charged up by this. That has to be very specific to you. And this is the piece of getting really personal with yourself and specific about your pleasures that can help it feel really fulfilling. So you have to, we call it the constellation of pleasures that really kind of define who you are as not only an erotic being, but as just a person. Like, do you love classical music and woodworking? Or are you a, you know, bird watching while listening to Metallica kind of guy? Like, all of us have such weird personalities when we really get in there. And those are the pieces of us that if we engage more deeply with them, we can really feel like met by them. And then we attract people that like those current things. So it just feels really important to like get specific about your pleasures and not let it be kind of this aspirational, I wish I was happier, vague, you know, feeling of the grass is greener over there. It's like, how do we engage really deeply internally so we have more to generate and experience together?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So what are some examples of the ways that, you know, since y'all have been together for more than a decade, right? What are some of the specific examples in ways that touch for y'all has shifted or changed over the years?
Seasons and seasons and seasons of love, and around it goes again. Yeah, we've been talking a lot. We're coming up on 15 years. Is that right? Yeah.
14, yeah. So many 14. We really think there are seasons of sexuality, that there are defined, and did I just jump in? Sorry. Yeah, that there are so many different seasons, and it's really important to honor and accept where you are, knowing that it will change. So we've had so many different seasons where there has been so much touch, so much lovemaking, so much massage. Having a kid changes things in terms of focus of attention, touch, and then illness changes things, and then like refinding one another. I think part of one way that we have focused on touch also is really believing, again, that we are responsible for our own sexuality. And so making space in our relationship for us each to have solo time, to make sure that we take care of ourselves, so that then we like come to each other filled up and not so needy, but more like attending to our own needs. So I think we've made space and time for that also.
The word reverence comes up for me a lot because it covers that full spectrum of, you know, when we were falling in love as young sex educators in San Francisco, like out in the night and all the thrill of that, into family making and like the thrill of creating a baby on purpose and all of the sex, but also the like struggle of infertility, you know, and like the deep emotions that our erotic connections hold. You know, and then into like having a new baby in bed with us, and into my illness. And right. So these are the things that unfold for us over the decades. Politically, like what's happening out in the world deeply influences like what we both need, right? Like what does our bodies need? Is it the thrills of joy and play and connection? Or are we just like holding each other and like holding on for dear life for that season? But during those moments, you know, there can feel like a failure or a rejection, or like, is this going to last forever? You know, we've been talking a lot about change and sex after illness, sex after babies. And in those conversations with folks, like the feeling of, is my sex life gone forever? Are we never going to get that joy and play back? Is this going to just be like downhill from here? Those are some of the feeling cycles that really cause like downward spirals and shame cycles for both partners, right?
Yeah.
And so recognizing like the seasons mentality reminds us that change will come again. Like that's the one thing, change and change again. And that can help you like be really deeply in that moment of like, let's just be in this near-death experience together. May it create like more beauty and intimacy and wisdom, but then we also know we have something to heal, right? Like we've gone through this experience together. And that also then has to be like relational outside of the dyad, right? Like you have to have community support and internal resourcing and maybe professional support to sustain relationships over decades, right? So I think that's really important too for folks to know, is just like, it's going to change again, but you have to be both an active agent within that and accept the things that you don't have power over and ride it out sometimes. But yeah.
Radical honesty, I think, is essential, just to be clear with where one is at, the good and the bad, just to be able to be with that and then shape it, and then be able to make choices and ask what we can work with within that set of circumstances, if there are circumstances that are confining or not. So always being aware of what's next and shaping it, but being really honest.
So when y'all were in one of these seasons, right? One of the seasons after baby, right? Or during, during a time where one of your health wasn't so great, were you as optimistic then as you are right now?
I mean, I think when you're in it, you're in it. I mean, we were just in that time using touch to stay connected. We were using touch just to like be with your body after sickness, after, when you're, there was, it still was a way of staying connected, but it just looks different.
I mean, there were moments in, after my illness where I was like, go on without me, leave me here. Like there's a real deep shame that comes up of like, I am not able to be the kind of lover I once was, the kind of partner I once was, the kind of life part, like there's a deep humility around illness a lot of the time. But all of this just requires like a lot of honesty, storytelling, narrative, but also perspective that, you can get from resources like this, from friends, from conversation with people that reminds you, of like the broader narrative of your life, right? Why are you here? Why are you together? And then a lot of people more and more are having conversations of like, what does this relationship mean? What are we call it like an explicit monogamy agreement. A lot of the assumptions about relationships are starting to be questioned. And so people can come into really honest relationships with like, what do you need from a partnership? Is your life partnership and your erotic partnership the same thing? And is that all from one person? Because that's a lot to sustain over time. So where is the flexibility going to be? Is it going to be more friendships to fill you up there and you go out with friends a lot? Is that what you need to feel fulfilled? Like we need things other than one relationship. And so I think in the second decade of our relationship, we're going to be exploring that a lot more of like, what does it take to sustain a life of satisfaction? Sexual satisfaction is difficult enough, but like life satisfaction and, feeling like a purpose-driven life over many decades, like we're setting really high bars for ourselves as humans. So how to come into a gentle relationship and also deeply enjoy where we're at. Because we were talking a lot about like what you want and creating what you want, but also like, what are the pleasures and gratitudes of just where you're at and savoring that more? And getting sick really brought me home to that, A lot of the bullshit falls away when we're ill, and the pleasure of just being together in a quiet room and a bird outside. It's just like, this is it right now,
Yeah.
And as Charlotte was saying, like the simple touch becomes so life nourishing. And then you start noticing, oh, I'm getting stir crazy and I actually want more thrill and excitement. And where am I going to challenge that? Where am I going to channel that, and feel challenged, perhaps feel that thrill. So to feel that rising, 4 years plus after my illness, it's like, oh, this is a new challenge of like, how do I direct my need for thrill and excitement as a suburban mom in a Subaru? Like, we're not in San Francisco and going to sex parties anymore, right? So that need for thrill and that kind of desire that's waking up will want to be like worked with. But this also, one of the things here is like, who are you doing this with? Are you talking to friends about your sex life? Do you have a confidant? Do you have a teacher or a community? Because anything we want to do and develop in our lives, like it helps if you have other humans and you have conversation around it. So the more conversational and, in dialogue you can be about things like your body, your wants, your desires, your partnerships, your pleasures, really helps you kind of see where you're at with it.
Beautiful. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many pieces here, right? About being present, being in practice, being in praise. Those are some of my 3 Ps that I'm working with, right? And that a recognition that this is lifelong work, and it is in opposition to the big culture that we live in. And it does take practice and time and effort, and that it does change over time, and that there are so many opportunities if we come out of autopilot and we are in this active relationship with self and with others, and really creating who we want to be, rather than the relationship escalator or the Disney happily ever after. We have to get out of those stories in order to really shape our experience that we really want to have. So I love this conversation that we've had today. You've offered so many gems of wisdom, and each one of them can be a practice unto themselves that we can take into our lives. And so I just really want to thank you so much. It was a real joy to connect with you today. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And we've been doing this for a long time.
So yeah.
The sound of savoring.
Yes. And to all of our viewers, please come back tomorrow for another expert conversation and exploration of sexual satisfaction and all the possibilities that go along with it. Thanks, Chris and Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.